colonial powers and missionaries who wanted to see the great Ottoman state get weaker, and also by the Russians, who regarded themselves as the protecting power of the Orthodox Christians who were Ottoman subjects. The terrorist and rebellion activities of the Armenian gangs started towards the end of the 1800s. The gang activity that first started in eastern Anatolia posed a military threat as well as a threat to the civilian population. Minority schools provided armed training, and Armenian separatism was encouraged in international schools. While the Armenian Dashnak Party organised the gangs, the communist Hunchakian Party, represented in the Ottoman parliament, defended living together with the Turks. But the fact that the manifesto about armed struggle published by the Gates group of the party, meaning SPARK, is almost the same as the PKK terrorist organisation which Turkey is fighting today is thought-provoking and exemplary. Before the First World War, the Ottoman Empire suppressed these rebellious gang activities by military means and applied legal sanctions on the individuals responsible. But as the First World War started, the terrorist activities turned into a big threat behind the front lines. While soldiers battled on the front, Armenian gangs killed civilians and at the same time threatened the army logistics. Many Armenians were in the ranks of the enemy armies in Chukurova and Dardanelles, fighting on the opposite front. By 1915, the enacting of the Relocation and Resettlement Law became an inevitable measure for the Ottoman state to ensure the security of its citizens and soldiers fighting on the front. The first measure against the rebellions and the advance of the Russian army on the Eastern Front, together with the Armenian gangs, was disarming the Armenians in the Ottoman army. Afterwards, with the temporary relocation law, which entered into force on June 1, 1915, and remained in force for 1 year, military officers were given the authority to individually and collectively relocate the elements who organised armed protests behind the front lines. Similar relocation policies in other countries were implemented to ensure national security during and before World War I. The size of the First World War forced the Ottoman Empire to implement a policy that would end the rebellion and the disruptive activities, instead of suppressing riot activities with military operations as applied till then. In the cases like the 1909 Adana incidents, the attitude of the state was about maintaining order. An important document from 1909 in which an Armenian merchant says that 9 Turks and 6 Armenians were hanged in Adana sheds light on the way the state calmed down the events. The Ottoman Empire treated all the elements that disturbed public order within the limits of law. The Tachir decision, which aimed to protect the civilian people and the Armenians themselves from the activities of the gangs, was implemented in Anatolia, where there was very little military presence. The law was implemented within the limits of law, preventing Turks from being murdered and Armenians who were the targets of gang activities from becoming a tool. This practice of relocating and settling the Armenians in the Syrian territory, which was within Ottoman borders at that time, was not a deportation, but a relocation. The relocation policy of the Ottoman state also includes recording the properties of Armenians and providing food to the relocated groups. The Government of Union and Progress, Ittihadiye Taraqi Party, which relocated its citizens to another territory within its borders under the conditions of war and necessity, respected the limits of law while doing so. In order to ensure peace and order, the Ottoman Empire implemented the relocation and resettlement policy in times of need throughout its history, for the Muslim community as well. By introducing the laws of abandoned properties, Emvali Matruka, until 1930, payments were made to the Armenians for their properties, who were not involved in any military action and stayed out of the soil of Turkey. The legal rights of the former Ottoman citizens continued to be protected. Not far from 1915, the the Republic of Turkey was internationally recognized in the Treaty of Lausanne. The fact that the so-called genocide was not one of the topics of the agenda is the evidence that the relocation and resettlement policies implemented by the Ottoman Empire at that period was legal. Members of the Armenian diaspora who want to file lawsuits about their so-called historical properties today are trying to bring up the allegations of so-called Armenian genocide in order to create a legal basis for those claims, even though their payments were made by the Abandoned Properties Commissions. The Republic of Turkey faced no legal debates and sanctions during and after the period of relocation took place. The campaigns against Turkey are trying to use the politically motivated Armenian bills voted in the parliaments as a leverage. However, both local historians and foreign experts agreed that the 1915 relocation decision was legal and for security purposes. The claims and campaigns of the Armenian diaspora feeding on a deadlock aim only to achieve political and financial gain. The diaspora organisations called komitagis who benefit from this global system are disturbed the most by the normalisation of the relations between the Turks and the Armenians.